But first, just 11 days to go before the referendum on the voice, and the Yes campaign is facing humiliating defeat. And that would explain some very desperate stuff from the Albanese government and Yes campaigners. And I don't just mean the usual abuse from Yes supporters, which I'll show you later, and tricky stuff with Yes campaign's signs, which are in the purple colours of the Australian Electoral Commission. What a coincidence, making them seem a message from the government to vote yes. Now, what particularly surprised me was some extraordinary stuff from the father of the voice, Indigenous campaigner Noel Pearson. Now, Pearson has been struggling to explain just why we need this voice, an Aboriginal-only advisory parliament of unelected activists, and in our constitution so they can't be sacked. His argument has been that we've had terrible governments that just won't listen to Aborigines, whose lives they're destroyed, when the Aborigines, in fact, actually know best how to fix things if only they were given a chance. Now, for a start, that's actually weird from Pearson, since, as I've told you before, governments have listened to him a lot. In fact, they've given his pet projects at least $550 million, most of it to help just 3,700 Aborigines in Cape York. And the results, when you look, are terrible. So every interviewer should in fact be asking Pearson, Noel, what did you do with all that money? What did you achieve? But on Melbourne's 3AW today, Pearson said it was governments, not Aboriginal leaders like him, that had failed. And he gave an example. He suggested that Aborigines had lived very long lives in the past until everything got stuffed up by governments that just wouldn't listen. And he gave the example of his amazingly long-lived grandmothers.
I had two grandmothers that lived to 102. I go to Aboriginal communities and I know that people regularly lived into their 90s, early 100s, late 80s. That was a general profile of Aboriginal life expectancy. It's now collapsed, absolutely collapsed, down to 50.
Wow, two grandmothers, both of them living to 102 before white governments presided over death and destruction. Small problem though, Pearson has himself written that one of those grandmothers, his father's mother, actually died when she was 62, not 102. Now, of course, he might just have misphrased that passage there. Maybe when he was writing there, he was referring accidentally to his father, who also died at 62, but two grandmothers living to 102? But more important is the other part of Pearson's story, that Aborigines commonly lived long lives way back then. And that is certainly false. I mean, most experts agree that Aborigines used to live on average to around 40 years before colonisation. Since then, Western medicine, more reliable food, that's helped to nearly double life expectancy. So colonisation has helped Aborigines today to live longer. But I guess Pearson's getting desperate, needing some knockout argument. You see, there's now finally been a new poll in the left-wing Guardian, and it shows the yes vote in massive trouble again at 43%, the no vote way ahead on 49%. Now, that yes vote has increased a little, but not by enough, by a long shot. Now, what is true, though, is that the fall in the yes vote seems to have finally bottomed out. But maybe that's what you'd expect from the massive spending now from the Yes campaign, all those corporate donations, Rio Tinto, Wesfarmers, BHP and the rest, millions and millions and millions of dollars. That's all that's paying for a tidal wave of the Yes campaign's ads on TV and social media is seeing non-stop now, plus all those Yes core flutes and posters. In fact, funny, one viewer tells me at Coffs Harbour polling booth, for instance, about 60 yes signs there to almost no ones. And a reader in Blair in Queensland tells me that 4 polling booths, yes leaflets, were right there on the counter where voters line up to have their names checked off. But despite all the Yes campaign's money, the signs still are grim. And you can see it now in how the government is scrambling to change tactics. You wouldn't do that if you were confident. For instance, Linda Burney, that's the Indigenous Australians Minister. She's now been sidelined, it seemed, after her appalling performance over the months before. And Labor has turned instead to Senator Malarndirri McCarthy to give interviews and appear on the ABC last night and to cut an emotional ad.
I'm so proud to say yes. Please support us. Vote yes.
But the advertising blitz is one thing. When people like Pearson actually have to get in a public forum and argue their case against opponents, their arguments just tend to fall to bits. For instance, I want to play you a minute or so of the ABC's Q&A last night that I think shows exactly that thing. It's actually quite funny because Q&A made the mistake of inviting on Wesley Ed. He's the former army officer I introduced you to last night. And he challenged Pearson and the pro-voice ABC host Patricia Karvelas on one of their fake claims that this voice isn't, it's not really about race at all. We're not being divided by race. It's not about race. Listen to the seconds of silence as Pearson and Karvelas struggle to find an answer when Ed calls them out on this obvious fraud.
What the voice is going to do is going to lock disadvantage into the Constitution in perpetuity. And I really struggle with that as an Indigenous person.
You think it will do that?
If it's set up to make it so that we always have this, way to express our issues. Personally, I think it would make more sense to fund need over race, and we could find other ways to value.
Indigeneity isn't race.
How is it not?
It's peoples who pre-existed colonisation.
You're going to have to explain. I'm sorry, I don't.
There are blonde and blue-eyed Indigenous people in the Arctic Circle.
We're not in the Arctic Circle.
It doesn't matter.
This is a constitutional alteration for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Whether there were peoples who pre-existed colonisation by the British, they were Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
Yeah.
And it's a recognition of that historical truth.
Okay. So the races we're talking about are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander.
I love that goldfish act from Karvelas, which is called out on It's Not About Race. But anyway, it is about race, obviously. I mean, Pearson himself has publicly said, I've shown you the clip before, that even I, a son of Dutch migrants, are becoming Indigenous. He said that, I'm becoming Indigenous because I was born here and my parents were buried here. So if he's right, and of course he is, then a lot of white and Chinese Australians whose families have been here much longer are also Indigenous. Where else do they belong? But this voice won't include them, you see. This voice will be only for Australians who are Aboriginal. So it is about race. And anyone who says, oh, no, it's about indigeneity, it's a distinction without a difference. It is about race. In fact, it's part of this terrible new racism we've got to discuss because we're now seeing it everywhere. And the thing is, the voice isn't really about fixing Aboriginal disadvantage like the Prime Minister claims. And Pearson gave that game away last night when he said this voice must actually last forever because Aborigines are so different apparently, and apparently always will be so different, and must always keep not just a political advantage over everyone else, but also a cultural advantage over the rest of us.
I hope the day comes very quickly when we're over our disadvantage.
So we won't need a voice then?
And why would we not? We've got lots to contribute to the country of
we do that already.
That are positive.
We do that already.
It's just
we are very much
necessary.
A part of our national fabric.
Okay,
No, the voice really is about dividing us by race. It's a new kind of apartheid. And I'll give you two more sad examples of that I haven't mentioned before. In Queensland, Treaty Minister Leanne Enoch, who identifies as Aboriginal, her mother is white, but her father has got Aboriginal ancestry, she's been telling non-Aboriginal staff to leave staff meetings while she talks to the Aborigines there. Now, when she was criticised for this obvious separatism, I'd call it racism, she accused her critics, yes, indeed, of racism themselves. And she said, I'm not going to bend these cultural practices at the detriment of my own cultural safety. So, seriously, apartheid now is about cultural safety? And this is the new Australia being pushed on you. The other example, in Victoria now, even campers have been banned now from Bear Gully camping, which is a beautiful little spot that overlooks Wilson's Promontory that campers have been using for decades there. But suddenly they're told, no, it's closed indefinitely. And so is the path to the sea. Now, a Victorian government agency that's in charge of negotiating a state treaty with Aborigines is checking potential damage, it says, to the site's cultural heritage. What damage, what heritage is not explained, but what seems to be the story is a couple of tribes both now are claiming that site and flexing their muscles, which means non-Aborigines just got to stop camping. And this is the sort of insight into our future. If we do not end this ludicrous, offensive, divisive tribalism, starting with stopping the voice. We have to stop this madness where some people can block a campsite because of some rediscovered or reimagined religious belief, stop people of other races from using it. Just like Woodside now, being banned from seismic testing of a gas field 200 kilometres out at sea because one Aboriginal woman, a traditional owner, claims she wasn't consulted. Just like the voice must be consulted, right? She wasn't consulted about a supposed whale songline that's believed by Aborigines. Or like Santos being banned from opening another gas field way out in the ocean because one traditional owner there claimed he wasn't consulted too. And the gas field would hurt totemic turtles, believe it or not, totemic turtles. All this has really got to stop, or we're going to go mad, and we're going to get much poorer, of course, and we'll also get more divided than ever.